Hey groupers, it's Pastor Marshall. I want to thank you for coming to group today and look forward to talking about Luke chapter 16 verses 19 through the end of the chapter. On Sunday, started off by talking about songs, books, or scriptures that people misquote. They think they know the words, but they're singing them wrong or saying them wrong. And I shared some examples. I wonder if you would share some examples just as an icebreaker from your generation or something that you would think of that I didn't think of. And then the second thing that I want you to do as an icebreaker is I want you to take a group poll, and I want everybody to participate. I know that we don't like to be forced to do something, but I want you just to begin, before you dig into this text, to take a poll. Do you think that Jesus is telling a parable, which is an illustrative story with a spiritual principle, or do you think that Jesus is telling a literal history, that this is a real story, something that really happened? Well, then, after you get done with your icebreaker, you'll be talking about these questions in group. First question that I think that you should definitely include in your discussion is, what was the sin of the rich man? Remember that we might call him Dives because the Latin word for rich is Dives, and so the early church, when they told this story, they told the story of Dives and Lazarus, not the rich man and Lazarus. So what was his sin that he went to hell for? He didn't order Lazarus to be removed from his gate. He didn't hurt him in any way that we know about. He's not recorded as mocking him. He just passed by him. He wasn't deliberately cruel. So the sin was he lived without noticing him. Lazarus became landscape to Dives. He just became a part of the scenery. And so that's what I want you to talk about, is sins of omission. Someone once said, it's not what Dives did that got him in jail, it's what Dives didn't do that sent him to hell. Well, I want you to talk about the sin of omission. Is it wrong when we don't do something that's right around us? According to this scripture, it is wrong. Some other scriptures that I want you to look up to help in this discussion. I think you should read from the Epistle of James, the 4th chapter, verse 17. Then I think you should turn to Romans chapter 7, verses 14 through 20. And in that section, Paul's going to talk about sins of commission. Those are sins that we know we're doing them and we do them. And then he's going to talk about sins of omission, sins that we're doing and we don't even realize we're doing them. And then I want you to turn to Jesus in Matthew chapter 25, starting in verse 31 through verse 46. Jesus is going to tell another parable that's going to have something to do with these sins of omission. It's clear in this story of Dives and Lazarus that Dives is held responsible by God for what he didn't do when he was walking by Lazarus every day that he went home or when he was leaving his house. I'd like to know what you think about that. In our own culture, we have Samaritan laws, good Samaritan laws that protect us if we're doing something and it doesn't go right, we're trying to help someone. But we also have, at least in 10 states, and California is one of them, we have laws that are called duty to rescue. And we will be held responsible. If a parent and one of their children is hurting, say drowning in a pool, and they don't do anything, they can be held responsible. If a property owner has guests on their property and say someone's drowning in a pool and they don't do anything, they can be held responsible. I want to know what you think about God holding us responsible for sins of omission. That's the first question I want you to talk about, is what was the sin of the rich man? Second thing I want you to talk about is there is an assumption that this story is based on, and that assumption is that it's harder for rich people to have a good relationship with God to get to heaven than it is for poor people to have a good relationship with God and to get to heaven. That it's harder for rich people to trust God and have faith than it is for poor people to trust God and have faith. I want to know what you think about that. Do you agree with that? Do you think that that's a true assumption? Or do you disagree with it? And why? Why do you agree with it? Why do you disagree with it? Well, then the third thing that I want you to do, and this is a dangerous question, and the group leaders will be upset that I'm asking this question because I'm not in a group to lead the discussion. But quickly, I want you to talk about the illustrations in this story and discuss whether you think that they are literal or whether you think that they are metaphor. And I wrote down 5. First, it says that the angels carried Lazarus to the afterlife. Literal, metaphor. Second, it said that in the afterlife, Lazarus is at Abraham's side. There's no mention of God, literal, figurative, or metaphor. Third thing is that hell was torment. It says that it was agony and fire. Is that literal or is that metaphor? Fourth thing, people can talk to each other, even though they're in different realms. Lazarus standing in one place and Dives standing in a faraway other place, but they can see each other and they can talk to each other. What do you think about that? Literal or metaphor? And then, fourth, it appears that people cannot go from one realm to another, that there's a chasm that separates the two places. And do you think that that's literal or do you think that that's metaphor? I think that'll be a fun discussion, and I wish I could be a fly on the wall to watch it. Well, what do I like? I appreciate this story because it reminds me about the sins of omission. It reminds me when I'm driving home from work to look around and to see things anew, because we just get our blinders on. When we're in our routine, when we're in our habits, we just begin to miss things. It's like something in our house that's broken that we don't even pay attention to anymore. And then as soon as we have a guest, they notice that something's broken. Well, there are broken people all around us, and I appreciate that this parable reminds me to open my eyes, the sins of omission. What I don't like the reminder that I will be held responsible for my sins of omission. I don't like the reminder that my heart can grow hard or grow cold or grow dead for hurting people all around me. I don't like this reality, but it is a reality. It's the human reality. Well, finally, I want to remind you about the application that we made on Sunday. I challenged you to think about someone you know that doesn't believe, that you have thought that if God performed a miracle in their life, that would shake them, that would wake them up, like when we send people to prison to scare them straight. Well, statistics show that those programs don't work. And at least in this story, Jesus says, and I think we trust him, he says that if even someone raised from the dead, it wouldn't work. So I challenged you on Sunday to think about somebody in your life that you have thought if they just had a miracle, that would fix them. And then remember that you're the miracle in their life. You were once in darkness and now you are in light. You were once lost and now you are found. You were once a slave to sin and now you are a slave to righteousness. That we are the miracles in their lives. And I challenged you to commit yourself to being a part of their lives, to working to be a good reflection of God. Because God only has one plan, and it's the church, it's his people. And there is no plan B for how he's going to win the world. Well, I hope that you have a great discussion. Thanks for coming to group. God bless. I'll see you next weekend. Bye-bye.